All right, welcome. This is a telephone town hall for Georgia's District 11. We've got two great candidates, Heather and Beau, joining us this morning. Just to note that the incumbent, Barry Loudermilk, was invited. I'm not sure if he's going to join us. We'll happen to see. But just a few minutes for the opening up for the call this morning. We'll open it up to Beau Cannon. Just a few minutes there, Beau, just to tell us about you and your campaign there.
Okay, thank you. My name is Beau Cannon. I am running for the Congressional District of 11 to unseat Barry. I am a 8-year Air Force veteran who spent the first half of his enlistment doing military funerals, walking daily through Section 60, which is active duty deployed military to Iraq and Afghanistan funerals. I've done arrival and departure ceremonies for dignitaries, marched in President Obama's inauguration. After that, I worked on combat search and rescue helicopters in Valdosta, Georgia, providing maintenance for the helicopters that go out and rescue both civilian and military members. I currently work as a contractor for Georgia Tech Research Institute, working on AWAC systems for a project the Air Force contracted it for us. The reason I am running is because I've been disenfranchised by partisan party politics, stopping government and bringing things to a standstill, that I started questioning, why did I serve? Because the government officials elected aren't doing anything to help the American people, and no veteran or their family should ever feel that way. So my entire campaign is to bring back honor, dignity, and respect to the American people to Congress.
All right, thanks, Beau. And then next up, just give you Heather McKendrick a moment to introduce yourself and about you and your campaign there. Heather Kilpatrick, sorry.
That's okay. I'm used to my name being mispronounced. It goes with the territory. So my name's Heather Kilpatrick, and I was born and raised here in Georgia. So I have spent my entire career here in Georgia working in healthcare, nearly 20 years now. I feel like my education and my experience has uniquely qualified me to understand the issues facing my district and facing far beyond here in Georgia and across the country. Georgians are hurting. Americans are hurting. Especially, I think the pandemic has brought that into stark contrast. Our duly elected officials are, pandering to their party instead of helping the people who elected them right here in Georgia. It is past time for that to change, and we need a new voice. We need a new voice representing the people of District 11, representing the people of Georgia, and I feel like I am that voice.
Great. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.
All right. And thanks again for everybody dialing in this morning. And as was mentioned in the invitation, I do want to give everybody an opportunity to ask the candidates questions. Don't feel put on the spot, though. If you're just here to listen, that's fine too. But all the lines are open. So if you're muted, you're welcome to unmute. There are several people dialed in, so we'll try to take turns here. But does anybody have any questions for the candidates?
Robert, this is Lee. I was wondering if anyone has a plan to undo what the Republicans are doing to our voting rights. How can we regain them? I'm 70 years old, and I really enjoyed voting by mail and dropping it into a ballot box where I could be sure that my vote was counted. Thank you.
Yeah, Beau, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I'll comment on it. So right now there is already bills being pushed in the Senate by John Ossoff, Reverend Warnock, to ensure that states can't continue to do this. And moving forward, the only way we can continue to ensure that everyone has their right to vote is to vote out the members who continuously try to strip that from their constituents. I can make promises that I will push any bill that I see to ensure voting rights, because as you know, they're trying to strip mail-in ballots, and that affects you being elderly, that affects military members who are deployed or stationed in states outside of Georgia. So across the board, they're just wanting to make it harder for everyone. And luckily we have Ossoff and Warnock in the Senate, and we just need to get Barry out and MTG out to try and ensure that congressionally we can help support the Democrats on the state level.
And Heather?
Yeah, so it starts with, I think, passing H.R. 1, the House Bill 1. It's already passed in the House, so it's moved over to the Senate. If we can pass this bill, that's going to essentially help where all these states are trying to pass these sweeping bills to suppress the vote. Like, especially what's happening here in Georgia. You know, the House in Georgia has already passed one bill for voter suppression, and they've got 12 more up for voting just in the House. And that's gonna restrict mail-in voting. That's gonna restrict drop boxes. That's going to restrict even people getting food and water while they're waiting in line. It's going to restrict the black and brown vote, especially. I mean, it's going to restrict the voting hours throughout the early voting process, even on Election Day. It's going to restrict Sunday voting. It's going to restrict so many different items down the list. Just flat out voter suppression across the board. So if we can pass H.R. 1, now S.R. 1 in the Senate, that is going to be a sweeping bill across the nation for all these states trying to pass state laws for voter suppression. So I think that is going to be the number one goal, to fight the voter suppression across the United States and the individual states. So that's going to be I think the biggest goal, because within H.R. 1 or S.R. 1, you've got it's going to give you more free and fair elections. It's going to prevent the individual states from passing these sweeping bills under the disguise of election security. It's going to end partisan gerrymandering, and then it's also going to give you these campaign finance laws, which are going to give more transparency to campaign finance. So I think H.R. 1 and S.R. 1 are going to be the answer to fixing this voter suppression that you're seeing, not just in Georgia, but in Arizona and other states as well.
All right, thanks for that question. Anybody else that is dialed in? We're taking open questions at this time. Anybody else want to ask a question of the candidates?
Yes. So I'd like to ask to both of you, if you had to pick the three biggest issues that you see as the center of your campaign, what would they be, and how is your viewpoint unique in that it can serve all of Georgia? not just Congressional District 11.
Yeah. Heather, if you want to take this one first.
Sure. So, honestly, my biggest platform for me is healthcare, simply because my background in my education, my experience, my additional certifications is healthcare related. I've spent 20 years working in healthcare. That's where my passion lies. And I see that as one of the biggest issues facing District 11, and then with this pandemic facing Georgia and then Americans in general. So healthcare is my passion. That's my issue that I see that I can do the most good in. It's also critical to our survival, and it must be protected for everyone. I believe that's first and foremost. We need more accessible and affordable health care. We need Medicaid expansion. We need coverage for elder care. We need core program expansion. We need mental health coverage and expansion. We need the Medicare coverage gaps filled in, especially that donut hole, which is just a disaster. We need regulation for malpractice insurance and frivolous litigation. We need to assist medical professionals on continuing education and licensing fees, and there needs to be some reform on that. And I think we're seeing some progress with this new stimulus bill that's going to help with the ACA premiums. That's going to be a huge benefit for people in District 11 and Georgians as well. They're going to be eliminating that premium altogether. You're going to be seeing with COBRA, they're going to be covering COBRA premiums for people for up to 2 years. That's going to be humongous for District 11 and for Georgians as well. I mean, because COBRA premiums are it's just absurd the amount COBRA premiums can be if you've ever had to pay COBRA. Those are just absurd. So that's my personal opinion is healthcare is, I think, the biggest issue facing a lot of people because of the pandemic. You're going to be seeing anybody who's had COVID and is facing the aftermath and the after effects of that. You're going to be seeing, I think, longer-term issues and requiring longer-term treatment. So I think everything you've seen go on from COVID, and you're going to see, I think, some mental health issues go on from that as well. So you're going to need coverage. You're going to need access to those services, and I think that's the biggest issue facing us right now, in all honesty.
Thanks, Heather. Beau?
So I'll piggyback off of Heather a little bit. Healthcare is absolutely one of my major focuses because I've worked primarily as a contractor on different contracts for private sector. I've worked building commercial news broadcast vehicles. And the thing that has always irked me is we have healthcare that doesn't cover mental health a lot of times. We have healthcare that you have to pay extra premiums for vision, for dental. We're the only developed country that doesn't have universal healthcare. Why do we say that we're the greatest nation in the world, but yet we lag behind on healthcare, education, quality of life, all because we have capitalism and a president had a friend who was in the healthcare industry and insurance and decided to privatize insurance. That does nothing but continue to keep poor families uninsured and unable to live their best lives. So my focus is getting us back towards a single payer insurance where you're not paying sometimes up to $1,000 a month for insurance that doesn't cover anything, where you don't have to pay extra on top to get your glasses or get a vision test because insurance companies don't consider your eyes part of your overall health. You don't have to get separate dental insurance because insurance companies know that they can squeeze out extra money from people to get dental work. I was in high school when George Bush's No Child Left Behind was implemented. For what it was a great thought, but it was so poorly executed that it actually hurt, and the current education system is because of No Child Left Behind. So my focus is to bring our education closer to being the number one education system on the world. No longer teaching to the lowest of the bell curve and trying to divvy out funding based on test scores, but get our education system to where we reward those who try their best. We need to increase special education to actually take care of people who have learning difficulties or they may struggle with things. I graduated in 2005. I took my graduation test in 2001 through No Child Left Behind, and then was told, well, you've passed. It doesn't matter whatever you make for the rest of your time in high school. You're now going to graduate high school no matter what because you passed the standardized testing. And that's a disservice to our children. It's a disservice to the future of our country. The other big platform for me is police reform. Across the board, we need police reform. A lot of times, police academies are only 16 weeks, and then they're immediately put out onto the streets. I think the academy should be closer to a 4-year program that comes with a degree. We need comprehensive mental health services for police officers to ensure that they are the best that they can be to protect our communities. I think that we need to get more social workers as a career and also have them attached to police departments so that they can respond to the less violent calls of an autistic black man sitting in his driveway, so that we don't have police officers who can't handle that situation. Those are my 3 big platforms that I will be focusing on.
Great. Thanks for those questions. Again, opening up for anyone dialed into the call this morning. Any other questions for the candidates? Okay.
I can chime in with one if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. I received Barry Loudermilk's email, I believe it was yesterday, where he announced that he was working with, I don't have the exact one right in front of me, with legislation to move the waiting period for purchasing a gun from 3 business days to 3 calendar days to shorten it. And I just wondered if they had any thoughts on that in general, I guess, since it's kind of new information.
Yeah, Heather, you want to take that one?
Sure. So I don't agree with this at all. I think we should probably extend the wait period to probably 5 to 7, if not longer, business days, not calendar days. And I think we should extend or expand the background check laws and add, it needs to be a universal background check law. We need to also add red flag and common sense laws. I think sellers should have permission to deny a sale to any person they deem unsafe, regardless of any kind of clear background checks as well. I think what we're seeing with these gun sales and the purchasing of guns and just in general, it's got to stop. I also fully support the expansion of the universal background check to close the kind of loophole for gun shows. I think that's a dangerous loophole that is exploited far too often. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I support the Second Amendment to a degree. I think people have a right to support them or to protect themselves, but I think there needs to be, clear stipulations, and there needs to be some transparency, and there needs to be background checks universally. And I think people need to be able to just use common sense. If someone gives you an uneasy feeling, you do not have to sell to them, and there should be protections to, safeguard you if you're not comfortable selling to someone, because it's just, it's common sense. I mean, if someone is giving you an uneasy feeling, you don't want to sell to them, that is your absolute right. I think there should be permits to sell guns universally so people can't sell them on the street and things like that. That's just, that's a start. I think there's a lot more we can do as a country to make this safer laws and safer reform on gun rights and gun laws across the board. But I think there's going to be a lot of overhaul that needs to be done. But it starts with universal background checks and red flag laws and closing that gun show loophole.
Thanks, Heather. And Beau, any comments from you?
So 3 calendar days is by far not long enough to do a comprehensive, full background check on anyone. I know there are bills currently being pushed to deal with this situation. I personally think that there needs to be more background checks for any flags of domestic ideology, red flags, you name it. Because currently right now a 3 calendar day window is just not long enough. Because you can check into people's backgrounds and not see anything that's a red flag, but then you have people who don't have any issues legally, but their ideologies are, I'm going to have 2 fully automatic rifles behind me on a bookcase as a political show, and that should be a red flag right there. I completely support the Second Amendment. If you want to own guns, awesome. But we need comprehensive gun law overhaul to match the guns we have available for citizens now. Most of the laws are outdated because they were written at a time before people had the technology we have now. Laws should always be living entities that can be updated and changed with the times. And the only people saying that Democrats want to take away guns are the NRA. We all know this. So I think that it starts with lengthening the window for background checks, allowing the FBI to dig deeper into people to ensure that they are safe. We need to really take a long, deep look at our gun laws and the ideology behind the gun laws to where it protects people more than just rah, rah, I have guns, I'm going to wave them in people's faces.
All right, thanks. Will, did you want to take the next question there?
Yeah. So many low and middle income Americans are still struggling from the huge financial disruption of COVID. Healthcare costs, lost wages, not being able to pay rent. What would you include in a third COVID stimulus?
So, Heather, you want to take that one?
Sure. So in a third COVID stimulus, I think what we've seen in this current one is a very good start. In a next COVID stimulus, I would absolutely include some student debt cancellation. I think that would be a good start. I think we could see a higher stimulus check, hopefully starting around $2,000 instead of, I know the $1,400 is to go with the $600 to equal the $2,000, but I think if we could start around $2,000, starting with the income, I was very disheartened to see they lowered the income threshold on this one. So if they could take into account that people have lives and bills and that an income threshold is not taking into account that it doesn't matter what people's incomes are, that people still are suffering. Americans, Georgians, we're all suffering, and an income doesn't represent everybody's lives as a whole. It doesn't represent the actual person and what they're going through. So an income threshold, I think, is kind of grossly unfair to cap it out. I mean, I get if you want to put it at $300,000 or whatever, that's a little bit, I get that. So, but capping it out at, $50,000 or $80,000 is kind of unfair in my opinion. So I think we need to recognize that an income threshold as low as it was on these last two is a little unfair. So on the next one, I would really like to see that not happen. The reform we saw on this one with the monthly relief check to parents, I would really like to see that probably go up. And I'd also like to see the unemployment benefits extended for longer. This extension that's just a few months at a time, the 6-month extension, doesn't do anybody any good because we're seeing a wall and we're running into it every single time. And that whiplash effect is not good for the economy and it's not good for Americans. So it's not good for anybody's mental health, and it's just we can't keep doing this whiplash effect. So that is one thing I would like to see is this unemployment extended for a longer period of time. I think it's going to be better for everyone. So we need to get that, and I think a higher threshold for the unemployment benefit as well. We need higher than $300. People have been out of work for too long. $300 a week is not enough. They need more because, I mean, nobody can help being out of work due to a global pandemic. It's not anyone's fault. It's time to reimburse them for the wages they are missing. $300 a week is nothing. We also need to include the minimum wage hike. People need to be reimbursed for what they're doing. They need to be paid a living wage. So that's just a bottom line. I don't care what the Senate parliamentarian says. It is absolutely 100% part of the budget. So it needs to be included. I think those are all crucial to a next stimulus. If we still need money for vaccinations, absolutely. And I would like to 100% see more money for schools. That should always be part of a stimulus, 100%, like without equivocation.
Thanks, Heather. Beau?
So I personally would like to see monthly payments to people, not this one payment and then it's 6 months and then you get half of the original payment. And it needs to be something that can help people, not $1,200. We need to see anywhere from $2,000 to $2,500 monthly payments to people who have lost jobs. We need to see student loan cancellation, be it $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, because there's people who've been out of jobs for almost a year, if not longer than that. There are employees who have gone from working 40, 50 hours a week to working 20 hours a week if they're lucky. Extension of eviction moratoriums. We also need to put rent freezes into place. I don't think being a landlord is an actual job. And people deserve to have a house over their head. They deserve to have food in their fridges. We should not be turning off electricity, water, or anything like that for people until at least 18 months after COVID has been completely eliminated, because we don't know if we're going to have another spike. We have mutations of COVID popping up all over the place still, and we're not even sure if the current vaccines are going to be completely effective against these mutations. We have to protect our citizens for the long haul, and sadly, Manchin and other super moderate Democrats are shooting progress in the foot because for some reason they think that giving people money in support because they lost their job because of COVID will keep them not wanting to get a job. I personally don't know anyone who lost their job that hasn't been trying to find another one, even getting the unemployment benefits that they've been getting. The average American does not just go, oh, I'm getting $1,200 a month out of unemployment, I don't want to work. That's a fallacy. I was a contractor. I made $106,000 in 2019. I started working for Delta, and March of last year, I was let go with 3,000 other contract workers for Delta. So I had absolutely no income from March until September when I got hired on with GTRI as a contractor, and all I had was $300 a week for 3 months because the federal unemployment ran out before they restarted it later. So this putting income caps onto stimulus payments is completely ridiculous because you can't take into account that someone made X amount of money, so therefore they made X amount of money every year before that. That's not how it always works for everyone. So I think that guaranteed monthly payments of $2,000 to $2,500 to every American needs to happen. Student loan cancellation, extension of protections from evictions needs to happen for at least 8 months to a year after COVID has been eradicated. And then utilities needs to be protected for at least that long as well.
All right, thanks. Those dialed into the call, any other questions for the candidates?
I have kind of a follow-up to that question.
Sure.
So obviously it's important that we have safety nets in place for pandemics and other things that could cripple our entire society. One thing that is often mentioned, though, is that the national debt is ever growing. So with putting these programs in place to provide avenues for people to still maintain their lifestyles, how do each of you see that we pay for that in the future without having to make our children shoulder the burden through their retirement age?
Yeah, Beau, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, absolutely. That is a great question. So we honestly could keep our children and grandchildren from shouldering this burden if we just did a flat income tax across the board. For the past 40 years, the middle class has had to pay more and more taxes while the upper echelon of incomes pay less and less and less and less. I think it's down to 21% maybe for people who earn over $1 million from the former guy's last tax bill. It's ridiculous. Why are we increasing taxes on poor and middle income families while giving more and more and more and more tax breaks to the rich and powerful? Republicans had no problem passing a tax relief bill that ended up costing $2.3 trillion for the rich, but they absolutely can't provide for middle and lower working families. A lot of our debt is debt to ourselves. So student loan cancellations, getting rid of debts to our own citizens would help. Honestly, if churches want to continue to try and have input into laws, they need to start paying taxes. Legalizing marijuana across the country would be a huge income and profit for the United States. Colorado is a perfect example of how much money is brought in. But at the same time, if we make marijuana legal across the board, we have to release the entire mass population of inmates who are serving ridiculously long jail sentences for selling marijuana. We cannot let corporate white America benefit off the backs of brown and black people who sit in jail for weed crimes. So those are some of the things that I think could keep our children and our grandchildren from having to pay for these down the line.
Thanks, Beau. Heather?
Yeah, I think a wealth tax is the way to go. Tax couple percentage on the wealthiest people in the world or the United States, and you can bring in a lot of money that way. And they've been reaping benefits off of tax reform, and I think if we turned it around, it'd be the easiest way to bring in that money. And that way the middle and lower income classes wouldn't be the ones footing this bill as it normally is. So I think the wealth tax is the best answer, and I fully support a wealth tax.
Thanks. Any more questions from those dialed in?
Yeah, I've got another one.
Sure.
While technology has made us connected more than ever before, it has also offered businesses new opportunities to take advantage of low-cost labor by circumventing employment regulations, minimum wages, and benefits requirements. Think ride-sharing apps, on-demand grocery delivery, and the like. how would you protect these workers?
Heather, you want to take that one?
Sure. So workers' rights in general are something that I've always been pretty passionate about. I think workers should have every right in the world if they want to unionize, for example, like we're seeing the Amazon fight right now going on to unionize. It is my philosophy personally, as I've been a manager for a very long time, your employees are your very first customers, and you have to treat them as such. And if you treat your employees right, your customers right, then, or treat them as your customers, then they'll return in kind. So I believe, your employees are human beings and people who deserve to be treated with every respect and every right as the CEO. And you will never change my mind on that. I believe in full rights for all workers as well as wages and benefits. So if your employees, if you need a union for that, so be it. I perfectly support that. I believe some employees, some companies need a union to ensure that those rights are there. And it's sad that it has to get to that point that CEOs and companies don't provide those benefits for employees and those rights to begin with, to recognize that their employees deserve all those rights and benefits up front and deserve the wages up front, to recognize their employees for the valuable workers that they are, that they have to bring in other people to show them that the value that is there inside their employees. So I 100% support anything that is necessary to bring that to light. If it's a union that needs to come in, I fully back it. If employees need to bring in, hell, even if it's an attorney, I support that. People are human beings, and they are. A CEO should not be able to profit off the labor of the people working for him. And so whatever is necessary to get the job done, to make someone see the value in their employees, I 100% support it. So workers' rights I'm a huge proponent of doing whatever is necessary to get what is necessary for my people and my staff. And I back that 100%.
Thanks, Heather. Beau?
So I agree with Heather. Unions are a absolute necessity for workers to ensure that they get the quality of pay, benefits, and respect that they deserve from their employers. I don't know how many people were paying attention to California, but California passed Proposition 22 last November, which allowed Lyft and Uber to quantify all of their employees as contractors and deny them benefits and employer-funded insurance and things like that. That is absolutely a travesty, in my opinion. That should have never passed. Contractors as a whole get shafted on a level that is unprecedented in the United States. I know for a fact that the contract house that I work through right now charges GTRI probably 3 times what they're actually paying me to allow me to work for GTRI. That's ridiculous. CEOs should not be making 300 to 400 times what their employees make. I believe that CEO pay needs to be legally capped at no more than 70 times what their employees make. Honestly, it probably even shouldn't be that high. We need guaranteed minimum wages, and this $15 an hour by 2025 is not cutting it. $15 an hour in 2021 is hardly a livable wage for most of the United States. So this whole capitalistic mindset of let's profit off the back of our employees that are underpaid, it's just it shouldn't be seen as the ideal. It should be judged and found wanting because it lacks human decency and respect for the time and effort that these people do to try and make a living wage. Uber, for example, charges restaurants to use their service, and then the delivery fees are pocketed by Uber because they have it set up to where the driver gets a guaranteed amount, but if you tip that driver, your tip pays the guaranteed amount if it's not over what the guaranteed amount is. So if you give a Uber driver a tip through the app, you're actually saving Uber money when you do that. That's why I always try to advocate for people to give their Uber drivers who drive them places or bring their food cash tips. So there are massive overhauls that we need to do in regards to the laws that govern contract workers, these on-demand services like Uber, Lyft, or Postmate, and stuff like that.
Thanks. Any other questions for those dialed in? I guess to kind of round out the questions, we did take a couple of questions via ResistBot. So if anybody's not ever used ResistBot before, if you choose, when you use ResistBot, it will send a copy of the question that you sent in to your congressional representative out through Twitter. And so we did have a couple of questions here staged just in case we didn't get the great participation. Thank you all for dialing in today and actually participating. It's been a great discussion that we've had. But one of the questions that kind of bubbled up to the top when I read through a lot of the questions that went into the office and hasn't really been discussed today, so I thought I'd bring it up. The insurrection that happened. Trump, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and even some of the things that have come out from Barry Loudermilk's office and undermining of the election results. I'd like to pose those types of questions, and we've even seen some arrests, and even the FBI is still looking for some of those folks that have, had the riot at the Capitol back in January. I guess I'll ask Heather first. Any thoughts from you, from what all went down back in January?
Sure. I mean, for me, it's fairly simple. If you undermine an election, you should be prosecuted to the highest letter of the law. I don't care if you're the president, if you're a sitting senator, or if you're just a civilian. You should be prosecuted to the highest letter of the law. When you undermine an election and you give that narrative a platform, you create very dangerous outcomes. And that is very much evidenced by January 6th. So we have to make sure we have clear consequences with actual penalties and action taken, bottom line. So prosecuted to the highest letter of the law.
Thanks, Heather. Beau?
So I served in the Air Force. I took an oath to support and defend the Constitution in the United States from enemies foreign and domestic. Mr. Loudermilk was also in the Air Force, and he voted to overthrow the vote of Georgians and try and keep Trump in power. I'm fairly sure that you take a similar oath when you are an elected official. So he has broken that oath in my eyes twice. I believe that he should be prosecuted legally. He should lose his honorable status on his discharge. He should lose any and every benefit that he gets from being a veteran or a sitting member of the House of Representatives, because he pushed the narrative that the election was fraudulent and undermined the election. I think that anyone who pushed that narrative should be tried as the traitors they are. I will say that directly to any of their faces. I will walk up to Mr. Loudermilk's office and tell him directly to his face exactly how I feel. Ms. Green and Ms. Bobart should be expelled from their seats in their offices and barred from ever running for political office again. This whole party line, partisan situation we have, anyone that has been pictured with 3%ers, Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, they should all be suspects, be investigated, and be removed from their seats. And honestly, I think the two-party system is a big feeder into the insurrection and the unease and the undermining, because if it just boils down to us versus them, and that does nothing but hurt the American people, because it immediately makes enemies of anyone who doesn't identify as Democrat or Republican. So I think that they absolutely need to be prosecuted, tried, and any veteran, be it political member or civilian, if they were a veteran and they were found to participate, should lose any honorable status that they had.
All right, thanks. So just opening up the floor one last time here. Any other questions from anybody that's dialed in? Thanks again for everybody's participation this morning. All right, that may be a wrap. So Heather, just give you last parting minutes here. Anything else to add or follow up here?
No, I just want to say thank you so much for doing this. This has been fantastic. I really appreciate it. Thank you for putting this all together. And I appreciate everyone else for joining the call and asking some really excellent questions. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, no problem. And Beau, to you as well to wrap up here.
I also want to thank you for doing this. I look forward to doing many more town halls leading up to the primary and the election, and then further past if I am deemed worthy of the seat. It's given me much to think about, and I look forward to seeing what else is important and how I can better serve my fellow citizens of Georgia.